We here at JoBlo Horror are big fans of these furry little bastards. I mean, what other movie franchise features such adorable little psychopaths? I said franchise. And sadly, not enough people seem to know about this series, other than the fact that it features Leonardo DiCaprio's film debut. So today, we're going to cover what the f*** you need to know about the Critters franchise. It's long been thought that after the success of Gremlins, studios were quick to try and get something similar going. But in actuality, the script for Critters was completed well before Gremlins was ever released, and even had to be changed in order to get rid of some of the overt similarities. Dominic Meir wrote the first draft as an homage to 50s B movies. Stephen Herrick loved the script and did a rewrite to make it easier to pitch. While major studios weren't even in the running, Show Films funded the project, and Herrick, stepping in as director, was off to the races. Eventually, New Line Cinema would enter the picture for distribution rights. First off, who are our killers here? Well, let me introduce you to the Krites. These aliens are little balls of fur and teeth, and their whole purpose is to consume meat and multiply. Their red eyes pierce through the night. They can roll themselves into balls and roll around at great speeds, even forming one massive ball for maximum chaos. They have the ability to shoot these little darts that will instantly incapacitate their victim. They hatch from eggs, and the rules of just how long it takes them to hatch really depends on the movie. And they're really a set of pack creatures, and we rarely ever see them alone. They're usually led by whichever Krite is the largest, although this isn't something they strictly adhere to. And boy are they schemers. The series actually starts out with them in some kind of space prison. They are the worst of the worst. But they're able to escape said prison during a transfer and hijack a spaceship. So these aren't your typical animalistic creatures with no brains. They're smart. Hell, they're even doing science at one point. Their appearance may change slightly from film to film, but they have a look that is immediately recognizable. There's no getting these bad boys confused for any other small horror creatures. Designed by the Kyoto brothers, the intricacies of the creatures really depends on the budget of the film they're in, and we're not even gonna get into their crappy CGI days. And despite their carnivorous lust, the films never get too violent, most boasting a PG-13 rating. So while we may get plenty of people eaten up, don't worry about things getting too juicy. Another interesting and sometimes confusing element of the Critters franchise are the bounty hunters. These guys can completely alter their appearance, but it's not an exact science. They seem to always be having issues with their transformations, and it doesn't help that one of the bounty hunters has many different looks over the series. It can be very confusing if you're not paying close enough of attention. So let's get into the movies of this ridiculous franchise and try to make sense of it all.
Did you see that meteor?
I saw something.
Maybe it's a Russian spy probe on some sort of secret mission.
I think you watch too much TV.
Critters released in 1986 and follows the Brown family on their rural Kansas farm. The Krites crash land nearby, and we immediately see that they're bad news. The Browns' young son Brad likes to hang out with the town's crackpot Charlie. Don't worry, their friendship isn't as weird as it sounds. Two bounty hunters, Ugg and Lee, are sent to take care of the Krites before they spread and become a problem throughout the galaxy. The Krites terrorize the Brown family as best they can and even kill a police officer along the way. But thankfully, Ugg and Lee show up to even the odds. Brad and Charlie, with a combination of luck and even more luck, are able to use a Molotov and a firecracker to destroy the alien ship. The film ends with Charlie heading off into space with the two bounty hunters, and the Krites seemingly being defeated. This one's easily got the most memorable characters of the bunch. We've got our young hero, Bradley Brown, Dee Wallace's Helen Brown, and the town drunk Charlie. But no one holds a candle to Terrence Mann's Ugg.
Hey, get in the truck and lock the doors, hurry.
Brad, you can't go in there. Let's just get help.
Oh, who are we gonna call, Critter Busters?
Critters 2, the main course, came to us in 1988, and this is where the franchise really found its identity. The Mick Garris-directed sequel really took the series to the ultimate place of cheese. Instead of a family, the Krites have moved on to terrorizing an entire town. And wouldn't you know it, it just so happens that these creatures show back up when young Bradley Brown arrives back in town. Ugg, Lee, and Charlie are sent back to Earth to finish the job that they didn't finish in the first film. This is when we get the craziest thing for a PG-13 movie: boobies. That's right, they randomly show full frontal here. Oh, the stuff you could get away with in the 80s. Anyway, Lee gets eaten by the creatures, and we get some interesting changes with how the creatures are presented. And Ugg can even transform into a massive Krite. It's quite the sight.
I'm a bounty hunter!
And Charlie gets his big moment and saves the day. Brad, Charlie, and Ugg return here, but no Dee Wallace. Then Lynn Shay also shows up as a delirious townsperson. Barry Corbin's Harv also has some great lines. And I always get a kick out of Wesley.
We really have to go now.
Yeah. Give my regards to Mars.
Don't be so quick. You're not as smart as you think you are.
1991 brought us Critters 3, and it feels more akin to the first film, with the Krites terrorizing on a smaller scale. This time though, we've got a badass woman as the lead and DiCaprio as her little sidekick. Ugg only shows up briefly, and it's definitely more of the Charlie show. Unlike the second film, which brought us a ton of new information about the Krites, this film mostly just meanders under the same premise. Things never feel like they're too out of control here. The ending actually leads into the fourth film, with Charlie hunting down the remaining Krites. Leo's Josh and Amy Brooks's Amy are pretty memorable, but most everyone else is fairly forgettable.
Those, man-eating hairballs that you do not believe in.
Yeah, what about him?
Well, I am reading 2 life forms on your level.
In 1992, the franchise went fully into space, and in the process goes full Canadian sci-fi film with Critters 4. These space truckers come across Krite eggs as well as Charlie in the process. So instead of a singular house or town to terrorize, the Krites have a confined ship. You know, think Alien, but a lot more silly. You can see where the fun can be had. But the limited budget also limited the number of critters on screen, with only 2 being prominently featured for the majority of the film. Ugg returns, and he's mysteriously a bad guy going by the name of Commander TETRA. Brad Dourif's Al Burt and Angela Bassett's Fran really stand out here, and Charlie is of course great as always. And while it's nice to see Ugg, he is such a prick here.
Hey guys, I'm Aunt Dee.
Whose aunt are you exactly?
I'm a bounty hunter.
Critters Attack released in 2019 and has sci-fi original plastered all over it. They also introduce a strange white Krite that's actually a good guy. While Dee Wallace returns, they call her Aunt Dee for legal reasons. So it's technically not even the same character from the first film, despite the fact that she has some mysterious knowledge about the creatures. This lacks most of the fun of the rest of the series, but at least they're still trying the practical effects. I'm trying to find some kind of positive. I guess we'll include Dee Wallace here just to be able to get one from this dumpster fire.
Yeah, I don't do the whole talking thing, so just drive, all right? What the fuck?
2019 also brought us Critters: A New Binge. This 8-episode web series is simply a reboot without any of the charm of the original franchise. And it's got some really terrible effects. The Krites are back on Earth, this time to rescue a missing comrade. Instead of a family, we're following 3 teenagers. There's bounty hunters, but they have none of the charm of Ugg or even Lee. Don't even get me started on Charlie. Most Critters fans like to ignore the year 2019. The only really memorable moment in this one is when Thomas Lennon shows up as a bounty hunter. Whew, that was a lot. As far as what you need to seek out, what you need to avoid entirely, and what you should check out if you have the time, we've got a pretty easy lineup to remember this time. As far as essential viewings, we've got Critters and Critters 2, the main course. These two are fun cheese with some great practical effects and some hilariously absurd moments. Then, if you find yourself with some extra time on your hands, throw in Critters 3 and Critters 4 for some even cheesier goodness. But please, for the love of God, avoid Critters Attack and Critters A New Binge like the plague that they are.
Who are you guys?
We want the Krites.
The Critter series has had some pretty severe ups and downs over the years. Hell, it's not even the most popular horror movie about small killer creatures, but damn if it's not extremely entertaining in all of its 80s and 90s cheese. Sure, you can completely ignore the most recent entries, but the first 4 films have a certain charm to them. Whether that's the practical effects or just the time period itself, these exist in a wonderful 80s and 90s bubble. So while I wouldn't be surprised if this series did come back in some way or form, 2019 proved that maybe this series should be left in the past. And maybe that shouldn't be considered a bad thing. Let's just hope we get the Kyoto brothers back to make the puppets this time.
What just happened here?
I'd roll this rig right out of town and not say nothing about none of this to nobody.